I don't think anyone should be allowed to look at someone else the way Easton was looking at me right then. It's dangerous for your cardiovascular health. The sunset cast a soft orange glow across his face. The wind blew a few brown strands of hair down onto his forehead, and those blue eyes were completely fixed on me, as if no one else in the world existed. If I kiss you right now, Easton repeated, quieter this time. You'll remember it this time, right? My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I tried to say something calm. Unfortunately, what came out was, I might die. Easton let out a small laugh. Dramatic. You don't understand. Ido. Then he stepped closer. I could feel the warmth radiating off him even without touching. My stomach tightened. Hayden, Easton said very softly. Tell me to stop. I looked at his lips. Damn it. The biggest mistake of my life. Don't stop. The words had barely left my mouth when Easton leaned down and kissed me. This time I was completely sober, and that made it 10 times more dangerous than last night. His lips were warm, soft, and unhurried. Slow enough that I almost forgot how to breathe. Easton didn't kiss like someone in a rush. He kissed like he was trying to memorize me. His hand gently rested on my waist, and I automatically grabbed his hoodie like a reflex. The sound of wind, distant cars, students walking by, everything disappeared. All I could feel was Easton kissing me in the middle of a crowded college campus like it was the most natural thing in the world. When he pulled back, I was still dazed. Easton smiled softly when he saw my flushed face. So, he asked quietly, do you remember now? I blinked a few times. Yeah. Better than last night? Easton. I hate you. That's not true. Then he kissed the corner of my mouth one more time before I could react. My heart was completely done for. By the time we both made it back to Hammond Hall, it was already dark. I still felt lightheaded, like I was floating. Everything had happened so fast. So good. Good enough to be frightening. Easton stopped in front of the men's dorm entrance and looked at me. You're overthinking. Is it that obvious? Very. I leaned my back against the brick wall beside the door. It's just, I'm not used to this. Used to what? Someone like you liking me. Easton frowned immediately. What do you mean, someone like me? I mean, I fumbled. You're popular, good-looking, confident. And I, Hayden. His voice cut through gently but firmly enough to silence me. Easton stepped closer. Don't talk about yourself like that. I looked down at my sneakers. I just find it hard to believe. Then let me make it easier to believe. Before I could understand what he meant, Easton lifted my chin with 2 fingers. You're beautiful, he said slowly. Smart. So endearing it keeps me up at night. And every time you smile I want to kiss you. I think my heart just melted into liquid. You don't need to be like anyone else for me to like you. The air went quiet for a few seconds. I've never been good at receiving compliments, especially the sincere kind. But the way Easton looked at me in that moment made me want to believe it. Really want to. I don't know how to respond to that, I admitted quietly. You don't have to. Easton smiled. Just let me like you. Damn it. I'm actually going to fall in love with him. Right at that moment, the dorm door swung open. Mason walked out with 2 of his friends and stopped dead when he saw me and Easton. He looked back and forth between us, then shouted, "Oh my God!" I immediately wanted to vanish from the earth. "Shut up!" I yelled. "Not a chance." Mason rushed down the steps like a breaking news reporter. "Did you just make out in front of the library? I will kill you. It's already on Snapchat." I froze. "What?" Easton, standing beside me, started laughing. "This isn't funny," I said desperately. "It kind of is," he replied immediately. Mason pointed straight at Easton. "Bro, you finally got him." "Working on it," Easton said, completely unbothered. My heart leapt again. Mason clutched his chest like he was about to cry. "This is so freaking cute. I hate everyone here." "No, you don't." Mason grinned wickedly. "You're in love." "I am not." I stopped mid-sentence, because Easton was looking at me. That very dangerous look. Not yet. I corrected myself, much more weakly. Easton smiled slowly. Good save. I gave his foot a light kick. Mason was still laughing when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made my stomach drop instantly. Mom. Almost on reflex, I stepped a few paces away before answering.
Mom.
Hayden. My mother's voice came through the speaker. Are you busy?
No.
Easton stood near the dorm entrance, still looking in my direction. Just that was enough to make me feel a little calmer. Mom went on about some family things and then suddenly asked, You still don't have a girlfriend? I went rigid. Such a familiar question. Familiar enough that I could answer it on autopilot. Not yet. Boys your age are all bringing someone home already. She laughed lightly. Are you too picky? I looked down at the ground. A familiar discomfort tightened in my chest. I hated this moment. Hated having to pretend. Probably, I answered quietly. Don't focus too much on studying, okay? Mom continued cheerfully. I want grandchildren someday. I forced a laugh. But right then, a warm hand gently touched my back. Easton. He didn't say anything, just stood behind me, close enough that I could feel his warmth, close enough to remind me that I wasn't alone. I gripped my phone a little tighter. The call ended a few minutes later. I exhaled slowly. Hey, Easton spoke gently. You okay? I nodded on reflex. Yeah. He looked at me for a few seconds. Then, liar. I laughed weakly. Am I that easy to read? Only you. My heart turned soft again. Easton stepped closer. You don't have to tell me if you're not ready. I know. But, he lowered his voice. I'm here. Okay? Just those 3 words were enough to make my eyes sting a little. I hated how easily Easton could move me. You're actually dangerous, I murmured. Why? Because you're making me get used to being liked. At that moment, something in Easton's eyes shifted completely, softened, gentle enough to make my chest ache. Then he pulled me into his arms. I nearly froze. This wasn't a playful kind of hug. It was slow, steady, like Easton was telling me he was really going to stay. I pressed my forehead to his shoulder and listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath his hoodie. Hayden, Easton said softly near my ear. I think I'm going to like you for a very long time. I didn't know what to do with that. I think I'm going to like you for a very long time. It didn't sound like flirting. Not like the playful lines Easton usually said to make me blush. This was different. It was too tender, too real. And the scariest part was, I believed him. I stood in Easton's arms longer than I expected. Long enough that Mason behind us started fake coughing very loudly. Okay, he said dramatically. I feel like I'm interrupting the final scene of a romance film. I immediately stepped back from Easton with a burning face. Go away. Easton was still smiling. Your roommate's entertaining. One day I will end him. Mason put his hands on his hips. But you love me.
No.
Yes. I'm removing you from my life. Too late. He raised an eyebrow at Easton. I'm now the historical witness to your love story. I hate this dorm. Easton laughed. A real, full laugh. And God, I loved that sound way too much. That evening Easton stayed until almost 11. Not in any shady way. We just sat in my dorm room, listening to music, eating snacks Mason had bought, and talking about everything and nothing. The strangest thing was, it felt easy in a way that was almost frightening. No cuernis. No scrambling to find things to say. Everything between me and Easton just flowed naturally, like we'd been close for years. Hold on. Easton sat cross-legged on the floor, looking at me in disbelief. You've never watched Star Wars? I've seen bits of it. Hayden. I know.
No, seriously.
He buried his face in his hands. What kind of person am I dating? My heart stopped dead. Dating. Easton caught what he'd just said. 1 second of silence. Then he slowly raised an eyebrow. I just said dating, didn't I? I tried to stay composed. You did. And you're not objecting. Should I be? Easton smiled slowly. The kind of smile that made my stomach warm all over.
No.
He leaned back on his hands, eyes still on me. I really like that you're not objecting. Mason's head dropped down from the top bunk like a ghost. Oh my God, you two are actually disgusting. Go to sleep, I yelled. I'm trying, but you two are giving off fanfic energy. Easton laughed until he rested his head on my shoulder. That moment made my heart completely melt, because it was so natural, like he was supposed to be here beside me. Around 11:30, Easton stood up to leave. I walked him down to the dorm lobby. The night air was cool. Golden lamps outside cast warm light across the empty paths. Easton tucked his hands into his hoodie pocket and looked at me. What time's your first class tomorrow? 10. I'll pick you up for breakfast? My heart jumped. You don't have to do that. I want to. The way he said want to always left me with no defense. Okay, I said quietly. Easton smiled. Okay. Then we both just stood there looking at each other. Neither of us said anything. Neither of us wanted to leave first. I laughed at how ridiculous that was. What are we even doing? Not sure. Easton tilted his head. I think I'm trying to find an excuse to kiss you again. My heart skipped a beat. Are you addicted to kissing me? Very. Before my blush had even faded, Easton stepped forward. This time he kissed me slower, gentler. One hand cradled the back of my head like I was something fragile. I hated how much I loved that feeling. When we finally pulled apart, Easton lightly touched his forehead to mine. I'll text you when I'm back in my room? I nodded. Good night, Hayden. Good night. I stood there watching him disappear into the distance under the campus lights like someone who'd lost his soul. Until Mason appeared behind me. You look like you just got married. I jumped. Jesus. I'm serious. He leaned against the door with a sly grin. You really like him that much? I looked toward where Easton had gone, then answered so quietly I was almost speaking to myself. Yeah. I slept terribly that night, not because I was sad, but because my brain kept replaying everything on a loop like some godforsaken TikTok edit. Easton smiling. Easton holding my hand. Easton saying, I like you. Easton kissing me. At 3 in the morning, I was still lying there staring at the dorm ceiling with my heart doing stupid things. My phone buzzed softly. Easton. Still awake. I replied immediately. Maybe. Same. I bit my lip and grinned like an idiot. You can't sleep. The typing indicator appeared then disappeared twice. Finally, Easton sent. I can't stop thinking about you. My heart died right there. I pressed my face into my pillow and groaned like I'd been cursed. Mason immediately shouted from the bunk above. If you don't shut up, I will come down there.
I'm suffering.
You're in love. Maybe. 2 seconds of silence from above. Then Mason shot up like the undead. Wait, what? Go to sleep. Absolutely not. I ignored him and went back to my phone. Me? Saying things like that is dangerous. Easton.
Sorry.
Not true. Actually not sorry at all. I laughed out loud. Damn him. He really knew how to make my heart a complete disaster. Me? You have hockey practice tomorrow. Easton. Worth it. I don't know how you can be this smooth. I'm only like this with you. This time I actually threw my phone across the bed and buried my face in the mattress. Because if we kept texting, I was going to combust. The next morning I was jolted awake by Mason screaming. Hayden, you have a visitor. I shot up, hair an absolute disaster. And the moment I looked out the dorm window, my heart immediately went into overdrive. Easton was standing in the courtyard below. Gray hoodie, sunglasses, 2 coffees in hand. Criminally good-looking, honestly. Mason peered out and let out a low whistle. Damn, your boyfriend is hot. I threw a pillow at his face. Don't call him that. You literally just blushed. I did not blush. You are literally as red as a tomato. Before I could argue, my phone buzzed. Easton, look up at the window. I went completely still, because Easton was already looking up, right at my window. And then he smiled, and held up one of the coffees like a morning salute. My heart was fully, completely done for. 10 minutes later, I rushed down to the lobby, still not entirely awake. The moment Easton saw me, he pulled off his sunglasses. Morning. His voice was slightly husky, the way it gets just after waking up. Deeply unfair to humanity. You actually came, I said. Easton handed me the coffee. I said I would. Our fingers brushed when I took it. Such a small thing. And yet it still made my heart go haywire. I figured you'd sleep in, I said. Easton shrugged. Wanted to see you more. Okay, that's enough. I was about to dissolve into the ground. But right then, a female voice rang out behind us. Easton. We both turned. A brunette in a hockey team tracksuit was standing near the dorm entrance. She looked at me, then at Easton. Her expression shifted immediately. Oh, something strange stirred in my stomach. I didn't know why. Easton exhaled quietly. Hey, Natalie. The atmosphere changed almost immediately. Not dramatically like in a TV show. Just something small but enough for me to sense it. Natalie was beautiful. The kind of athletic beauty you see on college sports girls. Brown hair pulled up high, long legs, an oversized hockey team jacket that made her look like she'd stepped off a Pinterest board. And the thing I hated most was, she looked at Easton like she knew him well. I didn't know you were here, Natalie said, her eyes lingering on me for one extra second. Easton gave a slight nod. Yeah, I came to get Hayden for breakfast. Get Hayden. My heart should have leapt at that, but Natalie's expression put a strange unease in my stomach. She looked back at me and smiled politely.
Iraplia, alil lauquarli.
Natalie adjusted the strap of her bag. Coach is looking for you, she said to Easton. Practice schedule next week changed. Okay, thanks. A brief silence fell. Then Natalie looked between the two of us one more time, like she was trying to figure something out. Finally, she just said, see you around, and turned and walked away. I stood still for a few seconds. Easton immediately looked over at me. What are you thinking? Nothing. Hayden. I took a sip of coffee to avoid his eyes. Who is she? A friend. What kind of friend? Easton stared at me for exactly 2 seconds. Then the corner of his mouth curved up dangerously. Are you jealous? I'm not jealous. You literally just made a face. I did not. You did. I hate you. Easton laughed. Not mockingly. The kind of laugh that's genuinely amused, eyes crinkling at the corners. That's actually cute, he murmured. I'm being serious. So am I. Easton stepped a little closer. Natalie is a friend from freshman year. That's it. I stared at him. Never dated?
No.
Hooked up?
No.
Crush? Easton raised his eyebrows. Wow. Full interrogation? My face burned. Forget it. But Easton just laughed softly and dropped his voice. I only like you. My heart immediately betrayed me. Why do you always know exactly when to say things like that? Because your face is very easy to read. I groaned in full despair and turned away before Easton could see me grinning like an idiot. We walked to the arts building where I had my morning film class. Campus was busier than usual. Students gathered on the lawns. Music drifted from somewhere near the fraternity houses. The smell of toasted bread floated from a cafe along the path. Easton walked right beside me. Too close. Sometimes our shoulders touched as we moved. Every time it happened, I had to pretend to be calm while fireworks went off inside. Do you have class after practice? I asked.
No.
Easton took a sip of his coffee. I'm thinking about sitting in on yours. I turned sharply. What?
I'm curious.
You'll die of boredom.
Impossible.
Easton. You flirt like you're getting paid for it. He laughed. I'm not flirting. Excuse me. I'm just telling the truth. I was completely helpless. When we reached the arts building, I turned to say goodbye, and Easton suddenly caught my wrist gently. Wait. My heart skipped. What? Easton glanced around for a moment, then pulled me into a hidden corner near the outdoor staircase. What are you doing? I laughed a little. Something important. What? Before I could finish, Easton leaned down and kissed me. Damn. Morning. Outside. in the middle of campus. I immediately grabbed his hoodie on reflex. Easton kissed slowly, lightly, but enough to make my mind go completely blank. When he pulled back, I was still dazed. "You really are addicted," I murmured. "Yeah. At least pretend to be embarrassed." "Don't want to," I burst out laughing. Easton looked at me for a moment. Then his expression softened completely. "I like it when you laugh with me," he said quietly. My heart turned to mush instantly. Lord, no one should be allowed to be this devastating. The film class that day was practically meaningless to me. I sat there staring at my laptop screen while my brain replayed the morning's kiss on a loop. "Hayden," I jolted. Professor Carter was looking at me, visibly puzzled. "Your thoughts on this scene?" The class laughed softly. I went red and fumbled through a few lines about cinematography while my head was still full of Easton's lips. And to make it worse, Easton had actually come to sit in, just like he said, right at the back of the lecture hall. And every time I unconsciously glanced down there, Easton was looking back at me with an expression that sent my heart completely out of control. This was psychological torture. After class, I practically bolted for the door. Easton was leaning against the wall outside, already waiting. "Cute," he said immediately. "I just failed at being a person in front of the whole class."
No.
Easton smiled slightly. "You blushed because you were looking at me. I'm blocking you." Too late. Before I could respond, a male voice cut in.
Yo, Hayden.
I turned around. Connor. Oh, great. My ex-boyfriend stood in the middle of the hallway with his familiar half-smile. Messy blonde hair, old varsity jacket, the same annoying confidence as always. My stomach clenched immediately. Connor looked at Easton first, then at me. His expression shifted slightly. "Interesting," he said slowly. Easton straightened up slightly. Nothing dramatic, but enough for me to notice. Connor shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "Hayden, we need to talk." "I don't think we do. Come on." He fixed his eyes on me. "I've been texting you all week." "I've been busy." Connor let out a thin smile. "Busy with your hockey guy?" Okay. I was actually getting uncomfortable now. Easton still hadn't said anything. Just stood beside me, expression calm in a way that was almost unnerving. Connor moved a step closer. "You moved on fast." "Connor," I said, lowering my voice, "don't start. I'm just surprised." He looked Easton up and down. "Didn't think your type was this mainstream." I saw Easton's jaw tighten slightly. Oh no, Connor didn't realize he was playing with fire. "All right," I said quickly. "That's enough." But Connor kept his eyes on me. "Hayden, seriously? Is this really the kind of relationship you want? All out in the open like this?" The air went cold. I hated the way he said out in the open, like it was something to be ashamed of. Before I could respond, Easton spoke for the first time. His voice was calm to the point of danger. "Something wrong with being out in the open?" Connor turned to look at him. They were almost the same height. The tension was thick enough that I was starting to genuinely stress. Connor smiled thinly.
No.
"If you're into making a spectacle of yourself in front of the whole school." I saw Easton's hand curl into a fist. Damn. I touched his wrist lightly on reflex. "Easton." In that moment, Easton looked down at my hand, and his expression immediately softened. Connor watched that and gave an unpleasant laugh. "Wow, you actually like him?" This time Easton didn't hesitate for even a second. "Yeah," he answered immediately. My heart stopped. Connor went quiet. Easton held his gaze steadily. A lot. The hallway fell completely silent. I think my heart was just crushed in the most dangerously wonderful way. Connor looked at me for a few seconds, then finally just gave a cold smile. "Good luck with that," and turned and walked away. I stood frozen in place. Easton immediately looked at me. "You okay?" "You." "Damn." I swallowed. "Yeah. Liar. I exhaled slowly. "I'm a little overwhelmed." Something in Easton's eyes visibly softened. Then he reached up and gently brushed the hair from my face right there in front of the whole crowded hallway. I didn't like the way he talked to you, Easton said quietly. My heart was completely beyond saving. I'd never had anyone stand by my side the way Easton just had. Not in the dramatic film kind of way. He didn't shout in Connor's face. Didn't pick a fight. Didn't try to prove anything. Easton simply stood beside me like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And damn it, that was what made my chest ache in the strangest way. Hayden. I blinked and looked up. Yeah. Easton was still watching me intently. You're really okay? I wanted to say yeah. On autopilot. Like always. But his eyes made me not want to lie anymore. I hate when Connor talks like that, I admitted quietly. Like liking guys is something that has to be hidden. Easton was quiet for a moment. Then he moved slightly closer right there in the crowded hallway. I know, he said softly. Just those 2 words were enough to make my chest tighten. I was like that in high school. I looked up. Easton leaned his shoulder lightly against the wall beside me. When I first came out, I thought everyone would see me differently. He gave a faint smile. Some of them did. I watched him closely. Some people avoided me. Some talked behind my back. A few guys on the hockey team thought I was going to be attracted to every man on the planet. I grimaced. Idiots. Yeah. Easton let out a small laugh. But then I got tired of being ashamed of something that wasn't wrong. A few seconds of quiet fell. I looked down at the hallway floor. You make everything look so easy. It's not easy. Easton's voice gentled. I just don't want you to be afraid alone. My heart completely gave way. I hated how fast I was falling. No, actually I didn't hate it. That was the problem. After the Connor situation, Easton barely left my side for the rest of the afternoon. He walked me to my next class. Bought more snacks even though I said I didn't need any. And every time he noticed me going quiet for too long, he'd deliberately say something ridiculous to make me laugh. Hayden. What? If a zombie apocalypse happened, who do you think would survive longer? Me. No way.
I'm smarter.
Easton gasped dramatically. Wow. You'd die first. In horror movies, it's always the good-looking ones who make the dumbest decisions. Harsh. I'm telling the truth. Easton looked at me for a moment and then laughed. Okay. So if I got bitten by a zombie, yeah, I'd bite you first. I stopped. That's your idea of romantic? Very. I shook my head and laughed helplessly. And that was the first time I genuinely laughed since the Connor thing. Easton smiled immediately, like it was exactly what he'd been working toward all along. My heart really was done for. That afternoon it started raining out of nowhere. The rare California kind, but beautiful. Raindrops tapped against the campus paths and the air went cool quickly. Easton and I ran into the central library to shelter. Your hair. I laughed. What about it? You look like a wet golden retriever. Easton looked at me with exaggerated hurt. You're bullying me? Yeah. After everything I've done for you? I don't recall asking. Easton immediately stepped forward and pressed me back against the nearest bookshelf. I choked. Hayden. He dropped his voice dangerously low. You like pushing my buttons, don't you? The distance between us was close enough that I could hear his breathing. My heart went haywire. This is a library, I said weakly. And people will see. Easton tilted his head. Are you still scared? That question made me go quiet. Not exactly scared, but not used to it. I grew up always checking my surroundings before I let myself look at a boy too long. Always controlling the way I spoke. The way I looked at people. The way I existed. So Easton touching me in public still made my chest tense up on instinct. Easton caught the shift in my expression immediately. His eyes softened at once. Hey, Easton said quietly. It's okay. I hated how quickly he always understood me. I just need time, I admitted. Then take all the time you need. Easton lightly grazed his fingers over my wrist. I'm not going anywhere. Damn it. I was really going to fall in love with him. We spent nearly 2 hours in the library. Or more accurately, Easton pretended to study while I pretended to focus on my laptop, both of us sneaking glances at each other like 2 idiots. Once I looked up at exactly the same moment Easton was looking at me. He didn't look away. He just smiled, then slid a small folded piece of paper across the table. I opened it. "Stop looking at me like that. You're distracting." I laughed and wrote back, "You looked first." Easton read it and immediately smirked, then added one more line. "Yeah, because you're pretty." Okay. I was genuinely done. I put my face down on the table and made a quiet sound of anguish. Easton laughed until his shoulders were shaking. The girl sitting at the next table glanced between us and whispered to her friend, "They're adorable." My face went hot immediately. Easton was completely unbothered. He just propped his chin in his hand and looked at me with an expression of total satisfaction. "I hate this campus," I muttered. "Too late," Easton said softly. "Everyone knows you're mine now." My heart lurched hard. "What did you just say?" Easton blinked like nothing remarkable had happened. Easton." He smiled slowly. "You liked hearing that." Couldn't argue. Because the thing was, I really did. Very much. Around 6 in the evening, the rain stopped. Easton walked me back to the dorm. The sky after the rain had turned a deep blue-violet. Genuinely beautiful. The wet ground reflected the campus lights. We walked slower than usual. Neither of us really wanted to part. "Your team has a game tomorrow, right?" I asked. "Yeah." "Is it a tough one?" "Pretty. North Valley's strong." "Should I come watch?" He turned and looked at me immediately. "You'd come." "Maybe." "Hayden." "If you're there." The corner of Easton's mouth curved upward. "I might show off a little." I laughed. "You always show off."
No.
He stepped slightly closer. "Tomorrow would be different." "That sounds kind of frightening." "Very." I shook my head and smiled helplessly. Then Easton's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and exhaled. "Coach." "Go ahead and answer." Easton picked up. I leaned against the railing outside the dorm, absently watching droplets still clinging to the tree branches, until I heard Easton say, "No, I can handle it." "Yeah. I know people are talking." I turned to look at him. Easton's expression was still composed, but his jaw tightened slightly. An uncomfortable feeling ran down my spine. When the call ended, I asked immediately, "What was that about?" Easton was quiet for a moment. "Nothing big." "Easton." He looked at me and exhaled slowly. "Some people on the team heard about us." My heart stopped. "Like what?" "Snapchat." He shrugged lightly. "Someone filmed us kissing near the library." The blood in my veins ran cold. "Oh." Easton stepped closer immediately. "Hey, I didn't." I swallowed. "I didn't want to cause problems for you." "You're not causing anything." "But if your team." "Hayden." His voice became firmer. "Look at me." I reluctantly looked up. His eyes were completely steady. "I don't care what anyone thinks. But I do." "Okay." Easton's voice softened. "Then I'll care enough for both of us." I laughed weakly even though my chest was still tight. He moved even closer. "Don't be afraid of this, okay?" Easton said quietly. I held his gaze for a long moment, then finally gave a small nod. But deep in my gut, I still felt it, like a storm was coming.